Level 0. The illusion. Most people see a spinning column of dust and immediately think, tornado, but what they're actually looking at usually isn't one. This is where it starts. A dust devil. It forms on hot, dry days, when the sun heats the ground so intensely that the air just above it becomes unstable. That hot air rises rapidly, creating what scientists call a thermal updraft. And if that rising air begins to spin, the rotation tightens, faster, narrower, until a visible column appears. But here's the key difference. There's no storm, no thundercloud, no large-scale system driving it, just heat and motion. What you're seeing isn't a funnel cloud. It's debris, dust, sand, leaves, anything light enough to be lifted and pulled into the rotation. Most of them are harmless. They drift across parking lots, open fields, playgrounds, spinning lazily, almost playfully. But occasionally, they grow stronger, much stronger than people expect. Some have been recorded, with wind speeds over 100 kilometers per hour, strong enough to lift furniture, knock people off balance, even flip trampolines, or damage small structures. In desert regions, like Arizona or Australia, they're common, but they're not limited to Earth's harshest climates. Dust devils have even been observed on Mars, towering kilometers high, captured by NASA rovers. Proof that all you really need is heat and the right conditions. They look harmless, and most of the time, they are, but they reveal something important. Rotation doesn't need a storm to begin. It can start small, unnoticed, and once storms enter the equation, that same rotation doesn't stay harmless. It becomes something far more dangerous. Level 1. The surface spin. Now the storm arrives, and with it, chaos at ground level. These are Gustnadoes. They form along the leading edge of a thunderstorm, a boundary where cold, dense air surges outward and collides with the warm air near the surface. Meteorologists call this the gust front, and it behaves like a moving wall of wind. Where that boundary pushes forward, the atmosphere becomes unstable. Air twists, breaks apart, then reconnects. And in those chaotic moments, small pockets of rotation form. Brief, messy, unpredictable. Unlike true tornadoes, they're not connected to the storm's rotating core. They never reach down from the cloud. They stay grounded, which makes them easy to miss and easy to misunderstand. But don't underestimate them. Even without a full storm connection, wind speeds can still spike suddenly, strong enough to snap branches, rip loose materials from rooftops, and hurl debris across roads at dangerous speeds. Storm chasers often capture them, skipping across open fields or highways, appearing out of nowhere, then collapsing just seconds later. In large storm systems like derechos, these rotations can appear in clusters, dozens forming along the same gust front. Not one funnel, but many, each one short-lived, but collectively chaotic. They don't last long, but while they exist, they're powerful enough to cause real damage. And then, they're gone, like a storm testing its strength. But this is still just the edge of something bigger, because when that rotation connects from cloud to surface, it stops being temporary and becomes something far more dangerous. Level 2. The water column. Now the rotation stretches from sky to surface and over water. That connection creates a waterspout. At a distance, they look almost unreal. A thin column, reaching from the clouds down to the ocean below, sometimes barely visible, just a twisting thread in the air. But there are actually two very different kinds. The first forms in calm conditions. Warm water heats the air above it, creating rising currents. Similar to what drives dust devils, moisture condenses inside the rotation, making the funnel visible. These are often called fair-weather waterspouts. They're usually weak, short-lived, more mesmerizing than dangerous, seen in places like the Mediterranean, the Caribbean, and off the coast of Florida. But then there's the second type, and this one changes everything. When a thunderstorm produces a waterspout, it's no longer just visual. It's a tornado, just over water, driven by the same rotating updrafts that create the most violent storms on Earth. And when it reaches land, it doesn't weaken. It transitions into a full tornado, capable of tearing apart structures and throwing debris inland. For anyone out on the water, there's no shelter, no walls, no basement, just open ocean and a rotating column moving toward you, pulling spray, wind, and pressure with it. Even smaller ones can overturn boats. Larger ones can destroy them completely. From afar, they look calm, almost peaceful. Up close, they're anything but. Level 3. The silent drop. Some tornadoes don't announce themselves. They don't need massive storms. No towering supercell. No dark rotating sky. They appear, almost quietly. These are landspouts. They form in a completely different way. Near the ground, small pockets of rotation already exist, caused by boundaries where air masses meet. Most of the time, they go unnoticed. But when a growing thunderstorm passes overhead, its rising air stretches that rotation upward, like pulling on a spinning thread. As it stretches, it tightens and speeds up until a visible funnel forms. No dramatic cloud base, no obvious warning signs, just a thin, rope-like funnel suddenly touching the ground. They can form in seconds and disappear just as fast. Storm chasers often describe them as appearing out of nowhere, spinning quietly beneath clouds that don't even look dangerous. Most are weak, but not all. Some intensify quickly, reaching wind speeds strong enough to rip roofs apart or flip vehicles. What makes them dangerous isn't just strength, it's timing. They don't give you minutes. They don't give you warnings, because by the time you notice one, it's already there. Level 4, the companion. Now the storm begins to multiply. One tornado is no longer the only threat. These are satellite tornadoes, smaller funnels that form alongside a larger one, all within the same rotating storm system. At the center of it all is a powerful mesocyclone, a rotating updraft, driving the entire storm. But that rotation isn't always clean. It breaks apart, reorganizes, splits into multiple zones of spin, and from those zones, new funnels can form, not merging with the main tornado, but orbiting it, like smaller predators, circling something much larger. They don't follow the same path. They move independently, which makes them far more unpredictable. You might be outside the main damage track, watching the larger tornado from a distance, thinking you're safe. Then, without warning, another funnel drops nearby, closer, faster than expected, and often in a completely different direction. In some storms, multiple satellite tornadoes appear at once, creating a landscape where danger isn't coming from one place, but several. This is what makes them so deceptive. The main tornado draws your attention, but it's not the only one. They turn one threat into many. Level 5, the internal chaos. Now the danger isn't just around the tornado, it's inside it. Not one vortex, but many. These are multi-vortex tornadoes. Within the main funnel, smaller, faster spinning columns form, called subvortices, each one rotating around the center, like blades inside a machine, and each one carrying extreme winds. They don't stay in one place. They move, orbiting inside the larger tornado, crossing the ground in shifting, unpredictable paths, each with its own direction, its own speed, its own impact. That's why the damage they leave behind looks almost impossible. One building completely destroyed, the one next to it still standing, because a subvortex passed directly over one and missed the other by just a few meters. Inside the storm, wind speeds can exceed 300 miles per hour. But it's not just the speed, it's how that speed is concentrated, focused into smaller zones, amplifying the destruction wherever they pass. Storm chasers who've witnessed these tornadoes often describe seeing smaller funnels whipping around the inside, appearing and disappearing in fractions of a second, like something alive, impossible to track, impossible to predict. At this point, it's not just a tornado, it's a system of destruction, and it doesn't hit evenly, it shreds. Level 6, the supercell. This is where everything changes. All the smaller forms, the brief ones, the hidden ones, they lead here. The most powerful tornadoes on Earth come from one type of storm, the supercell, a rotating thunderstorm, organized, structured, and sustained. At its core is something called a mesocyclone, a massive, rotating updraft that can stretch for miles into the sky. Air rises and begins to spin, faster, stronger, feeding the storm with continuous energy. Unlike ordinary storms, this rotation doesn't collapse. It sustains itself, and when conditions align, that rotation tightens, extends downward, and forms a tornado that doesn't just appear, it persists. These tornadoes can stay on the ground for over an hour. Some travel hundreds of kilometers, cutting continuous paths of destruction, visible even from satellites. They don't just hit one location, they move across towns, across cities, across entire regions. At their strongest, they reach EF5 intensity, the highest rating on the scale. At this level, damage isn't partial, it's total. Homes are removed from their foundations. Concrete structures collapse. Vehicles are thrown like debris. In past events, entire neighborhoods have vanished in minutes, not damaged, erased. And what makes them even more dangerous is that they evolve. They can spawn satellites, develop multiple vortices, change direction unexpectedly. Even with modern radar, their exact behavior is never fully predictable. At this level, you're not dealing with a moment. You're dealing with a system that can sustain destruction for as long as it remains active. This is the peak, the most violent form of rotating air nature can produce. And when it happens, there's no controlling it, only surviving it. A tornado isn't just one thing. It's a spectrum, from harmless rotation to complete destruction, and the difference between them can form in seconds. The next one won't wait for you to understand it, but the next video will. Subscribe.